Hello, everybody. We'll start in a few minutes. Meanwhile, I'm clicking on allow everybody to talk. You know what? I should share the screen. Here you are. And I should taste some of my own poison. I should say that I want to know how to allow everybody on Zoom to talk. So who is the better person to ask if not ChatGPT? So I'm saying, hey, ChatGPT, tell me how to allow a participant, and you have to be more or less precise in your language. Participant in Zoom to talk. It says to allow, you should give them permission. Yes, I'm a host. You can manage participant settings. Start the meeting. So far, it's slower than if I just clicked on everyone. Mute all. Okay. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Well, that is interesting. It looks like a hack. So I'm going to my meeting. And I'm going to participants just like ChatGPT told me to do. Here. These are the attendees. No, I don't see that. Okay, back to homemade recipe. Allow everybody to talk. And I promised one person to get that too. So that was the link. That is the link that I need to give him. And he will join as well. But it's interesting that I started with an unplanned demonstration on how to do things. Well, great. I'll keep doing this. I will first allow every participant to talk because that's what we're here for. And we have a little time, not to waste your time, guys and girls, but to be nice and polite, and mostly to make it a lively conversation. Now, if I miss somebody or somebody comes later, then just ask me, please enable talk. Another thing that I will do, okay, as much as I can, right? Another thing that I can do is go to chat. And there on chat, I'm first of all talking to everybody, and then I'm allowing everybody to chat to everybody else. Now that becomes like an Eastern Bazaar. So everybody can talk to everybody, and that is my goal. So hello, good afternoon, or where you are getting logged in from. That shouldn't disturb me. And here is the link. The main link is right here. That is this one. Okay, and I'll give you that link on chat so that you can all join. Here it is. That's the link. That's our run. And I'm giving that to you on chat. And please speak up. You hear me okay, I assume, right? Otherwise you would say something. You see my screen. So we're good. Here is the chat. Our webinar link. Wonderful. Thank you, Charles. That is our webinar link, and that's all you need.
And
Now,
anybody hear me? Good, right?
Wonderful, John. Thank
You're
you
down
so
in
much.
Houston, correct?
Hello.
Yes, I'm in Houston. Yes, and it's good weather.
I'm from Houston too.
Okay.
Okay.
How's the economy down there?
I don't know. I don't step up. Sorry. Okay. Thanks. Now that's very encouraging. Thank you. So you see, that's called Advances in AI webinar, and it changes as it goes. When I started, ChatGPT wasn't yet here. When it was December 9, right, last year, and then it appeared. So we even changed the subject, and it's Hugging Face and the OpenAI, and maybe we'll change it again. But here is the folder. That's the folder that you need. If you need the slides, if you need any materials, let me open it here for you. Okay, that's all the other things. But today you don't need it because I prepared everything for you. Now scroll to the bottom. Here you are. Scroll to the bottom and you'll see what I want to cover today. That's what I want to cover today. So let's look at that to set up the expectations. It's April 14. And I see something on the chat. Yes, please, all the links, pass them here, but the most important thing is our webinar link. So you got that. The other links, I will paste them. If I use them, when I use them, it will be both here and there. What I want to talk about first, that you may have heard this thing called prompt engineering and supposedly 350,000 a year salary for that. We'll talk about how accurate is that. And spoiler, I think that is total bogus, but you're very free to disagree. Then we'll talk about how you really do it. So one very interesting thing is how you really do it is with Microsoft. You'll be surprised. It was popular bashing Microsoft, but it may become popular to do just the other thing. And we'll talk about how Microsoft suggests that you train ChatGPT. That's not an easy thing, not at all. It took me a lot of thinking to figure out how they do it. Not only they do it, they invite you into their cloud, but they also give you an outline of how you can do it with another model and with another provider. So we'll look at that. And then finally, that's an outline of how we're going to practically do it. So I think that is what I want to cover. Your questions are very welcome when you do something on the chat or when you speak up. Okay, so let us start. I got a request to train 15,000 people in prompt engineering. Now, I will not mention who it came from, but it was a brilliant honcho, corporate honcho, who understood, oh, that's a new profession and we are going to thrive, people. So no, we need to change that thinking. Prompt engineering simply means that you know how to talk to ChatGPT politely and precisely, express your thought very clearly, and then maybe adjust your thought. Well, all that is only important until the next release, and the next release of ChatGPT probably will be smarter, and you will not have your $350,000 a year because ChatGPT will fire you. Now I will look at chat. Elephant Scale class link. Elephant Scale links are on Elephant Scale. So you go to Elephant Scale, but that was not my purpose to promote my company. Elephant Scale here, well, I must say, maybe I'm glad you asked. Here's Elephant Scale, but we're doing corporate training and we're not very much into individual classes. I'll talk about this. So I'll give you that link on the chat just in case you're interested. Really, I feel uncomfortable doing this promotion. So I'm closing that. Let's go back. And this is what I found, the Chat GPT cheat sheet. Now let's look at that. Maybe I can make it bigger. Maybe not. I can probably download that. But look, I'll read it to you. What it says, define the ChatGPT role. Say, act as a Linux terminal, or act as a JavaScript console, or act as if you're an experienced person, act as if you're a child, and then explain things to me. Say, no, I didn't understand that. You know, I didn't get it explained clearly. Or summarize. That's the famous thing. It was too many words, too many letters. Could you please summarize? Now, so far, I think nothing here deserves 350 a year. Chained prompting. That means, yeah, it was good, but it was not in the right language. It remembers all that you said in this conversation. By the way, right here, we are here on ChatGPT. These are all the conversations that I had with it. And I write my outlines for the courses with the help of ChatGPT. And my channels send me back the outlines that they wrote to ChatGPT. But as we see, the tool is not perfect. It's a philosophical question whether it will ever be perfect. But as you can see, you can use it for a lot of things. And when I see, maybe I see that those chats, maybe you will ask me those questions at the end, because what I'm doing is I'm compulsive, obsessively looking at the chat, and I shouldn't really do that. Okay, let's go back to what we're talking about. That's right here. And the bottom. And we're discussing, is there such a profession as ChatGPT? Prompts, and I think by now I convinced you that there is something in prompts. For example, write the program in Python. That's a prompt. But look, I want you to know all of my life. That's not really prompt because you didn't give the documents. We'll talk about this. So ChatGPT is simply a way to tell it a bit more information, but not that much, and you'll only go so far. Now, if you Google for ChatGPT, and I wonder how long it will be before if you Bing for ChatGPT, because so far, even Microsoft folks, they all say if you Google, but that might change. And the way it's changing, if you talk to ChatGPT or if you talk to Bing GPT, it might. But for now, if you Google for prompt engineering, you will find an enormous amount of search engine optimization tricks. That's all. So I think I covered prompt engineering well enough, but we will be back to that, because it turns out that Microsoft gives a wonderful lecture about how they are going to generate, help to ChatGPT so that it knows more, it knows better, and in this way, it can really help you. Now, for that, I need to find a video where they talk. And since I cannot easily find that video, okay, I will just tell. So here's what Microsoft have done. They have integrated ChatGPT in their Azure. Next thing, they have found a good way to tell GPT what it doesn't know. And the example that they give is this. Let us say you have a big company and many people talk to this bot, and they want to know things like, does my insurance cover this? Well, it will answer, I'm just a plain large model, and sorry that I don't know those things. You will tell him, this is the complete repository under Azure that has my data. It is secure because it is under my repository. It is complete because somebody gave it to you. So please make prompts out of that. So we're back to prompt engineering. You're saying, here are the prompts that you may need when you give an answer, quote from exact source. It will do exactly that. So that seems to be exactly the right way, which is not obvious. The right way is ChatGPT is only a model, and it helps you understand things. Okay, I log in. And it helps you understand the question, but it doesn't know things that, first of all, it never learned and is not even supposed to learn because these are private data. So you tell, that's all in the repository. There is a name for that. Microsoft calls it RAG, something that amounts to a search engine within the documentation. That is what you give to ChatGPT. And you are saying, now quote from the right document. Amazingly enough, it gives it to you. I will post those links later on because right now I don't know where they are, and we will not wait. Oh, wait a second, that's the link. Okay, great. But let me first explain what it does. So they also give an example of code. They have a code repository, which gives you the implementation. We will see some of that. I know how to share with the sound. For that, I need to do this. I stop share. I share again. But this time I'm saying share a sound. So when I'm watching videos, you guys will also see the videos. I apologize that I misled you. Here is the actual video, but let's first talk about this. Let's ignore the hype. Unfortunately, everybody promotes their own agenda. In some way, I also promote mine, but my agenda is the result that I understood, and that's understanding I'm bringing to you. So they tell you that you can use ChatGPT and it is unlimited as long as you're willing to pay. That the best way for that is pay per token. Token is approximately a word, a little bit less than a word. So think of that as kind of currency, right? So maybe 1,000 words is 1,500 tokens, and they refuse to tell you what the formula is. It depends upon the text. So the price is predictable and you pay for what you use. Therefore, you get the unlimited ChatGPT. Well, by now, you can also get unlimited ChatGPT from ChatGPT itself, again, if you pay per use. So that is step number one. But step number two, in this video, they tell you how to do it, is integrated with the repository of knowledge that resides in Azure under your private account. And therefore, you can ask the question like, does my insurance cover scuba diving equipment? And after that, it says yes. Yes, this is the document that is part of your company repository, and it tells you that it covers the equipment. Then they will also give you examples of, well, that is an insurance document and it's just too complex for me. So you summarize that, but that's too high. Could you do a table? Could you do a table showing my different options? It does a table right away. Now, that is if you use Microsoft. What if you don't want to use Microsoft? Understandable. Well, at least they give you the architecture. Use any search engine that you want. Use Elastic, for example, and put your documents into Elastic. Then supply your documents to ChatGPT in the same way that Microsoft points the way, and you've got your problem solved. So what I'm suggesting at this point is, well, I can't resist. I will look at chat. Okay. It's good. Let us discuss your guys' questions after we are done. Let's say maybe we do 45 minutes or 40 minutes to explain what we do and a little bit of time to discuss the question. But now I want to show you this video. Now that I told the secret, that's what I found out. And I have to tell you, it wasn't easy because ChatGPT itself is modern today. Gone are the days when it only knew everything from up until 2021. No, it knows about itself. They have included modern history more or less into ChatGPT. So they tell you that there is such a thing as fine-tuning. But that fine-tuning simply means giving it a little bit more prompts. The fine-tuning that they advertise is this: list all the possible questions that your users could ask and list all the answers that they should get and give them to me. Now, that's complete nonsense. If I can list all the questions in the world, either I don't need ChatGPT or it doesn't help, because what if they change the language a little bit? No, that doesn't work. You need to rely on ChatGPT for understanding. So therefore, the result is ChatGPT works as your language model, but then as your fact checker. That's where you use additional thing, and that additional thing could be Microsoft RAG, R-A-G, or it could be your own device, how you do it, but you need additional information, especially if that is your company's proprietary documentation. So let me do this. Now, even though I'm promoting somebody else, but what can you do? Now, when I go, I will jump to minute 2. This is where they start talking about some interesting thing. And when I start, I want to have the sound.
ChatGPT is a new model optimized for conversational style interaction, though it can be used for other tasks as well. It uses a particular convention and syntax to denote turns between the user and ChatGPT as assistant in a conversation. And while it's trained on public data, we can construct prompts that include both instructions and additional data to generate responses. So imagine taking ChatGPT and applying it to your own data, but with precise control over the knowledge base for in-context and relevance responses. We can do that using an approach often called retrieval augmented generation. In this case, we combine the Azure OpenAI service with Azure Cognitive Search to index and retrieve data of all kinds, knowledge that is private and external to the ChatGPT large language model. The retrieval step in Azure Cognitive Search finds the most relevant pieces of information, even if it's millions of documents or data points, and presents the top-ranked results to the language model. And this lets you have detailed, informed interactions with your data. And because the knowledge lives outside of the ChatGPT model, you're in control of it, and it's not used to train the model. And equally important from an enterprise perspective, any chat session state lives entirely within your application. And whether you keep it or not and where is fully up to you.
Just to clarify, by private knowledge, we mean only data that exists within your organization or your application's boundary.
That's right. Or equally, you could be a SaaS vendor that wants to enlighten your application to provide an in-context conversation or content generation experience for your customers by using the data you manage for them. So you're just using the large language model's understanding and reasoning capabilities and building your own app experience around it.
That makes a
So just a bit more, because we want to see an example that they will do, even though I gave that example to you. So let us continue a bit more.
lot of sense. So now we've got all the context. So can you show us an example of how this would work in an app?
Sure. We'll walk through a typical app experience that you can build around ChatGPT. I have here a sample human resources web application. By the way, we've published the code for this whole app, including the UX, the backend, and the sample data, in a public GitHub repo at aka.ms/entgpt search for you to try it out or use as a starting point for your own apps once you've watched the show. So this app lets employees generally chat about topics related to their employment benefits and the employee handbook. In this case, I want to ask about healthcare coverage, which can be unique by plan, location, individual, etc. So I'll type, does my plan cover annual eye exams? In the generated response, you'll see that not only does ChatGPT use the knowledge necessary to derive a response, but as a best practice, also cites its sources. That's because a key area we are actively exploring is how do we make responses trustworthy? These models are not perfect. And so we see this as a collaboration between the user and the app, where the app reads through millions of data points and picks a few to formulate an answer.
So I'd like to point out that that is what people initially called prompt engineering, except that they immediately saw that humans can help. Well, it turns out that the machines help even better, and humans, stand no chance at this. It's like fixing bugs on the fly. Well, machines should be able to do it, and now they are, because nobody knows by heart all the documents inside the company repository.
In this case, it showed the source it used for the facts, enabling the user to validate the response generated from the benefit options PDF source if needed. As I mentioned earlier, we achieved this by coordinating the Azure OpenAI model, cognitive search, and how we pre-process the data. Now I'll type a follow-up question. How about hearing? While the question in isolation wouldn't make sense, in the context of the chat history, it can figure out what information it needs to answer. For each response, I can see the preview of the file from the citation. And it also shows all the supported content used to formulate the response.
And so in a way, what we're doing here is we're conditioning ChatGPT to produce source citations in its response, which then helps you to validate them. So can you explain how then this was able to figure out the response?
Sure. We wrote this up so it exposes the details of what happens in each turn of the conversation. Let's go back to our follow-up question, how about hearing? Which, as I mentioned, on its own doesn't present enough context to be answered in isolation. When I click on this light bulb, I can see the process it went through to provide a response. Here, we can see that GPT first takes the chat history and the last question to produce a good search query. You can also see the rest of the prompt, including some of the markup used to tell ChatGPT where turns are. By the way, there is also a new API that has more structure around this, so you don't have to construct the prompts with markup manually. Finally, you can see the sources part, which is where we inject the fragments of documents we recalled from the search index.
Okay, from here on, first of all, it's marketing fluff, and secondly, it's too deep. So let's close that. Here we are, and we were right here discussing this video. Well, again, I'm giving you the link. That's the link to this webinar. And here are all the links that you need to go on from here. Right here on chat, I'm giving you the link. And so to summarize what Microsoft had done is they have accepted the imperfection of the model. And that imperfection is not to be solved by human engineering, as I have already beaten the dead horse many times, but instead by adding integration. What Microsoft hadn't told you that I don't think you have to use Azure. You can use your own designed storage and you will be just as good. Now, it won't be all that easy, as you can see. That's not ChatGPT cheat sheet where the best advice is to explain clearly, and the best advice is to really write it in code. And just as an example, as if you haven't played with it, then for writing the code, write the code to integrate ChatGPT with Azure. Very generic, not clear what it is, but it will attempt. So it tells you that's how you integrate. That's not exactly what I mean. So stop there. And private data. Let's see if it understands that. And add private data, Azure Blob Storage. That's not exactly it, but that's just an example that many people already boast about talking to ChatGPT, and now I'm going in a familiar trail. My experience with ChatGPT, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you. Instead, I'll tell you one of the interesting lectures where I heard a guy, a mathematician, French by nationality, and working at Microsoft. He explains how he thinks that ChatGPT begins to think. And the proof that he brings is very funny. Famously, ChatGPT can't count. So the mathematician gives him a little arithmetic problem, pretty simple, and it answers 120, and that's not the right answer. The right answer in that case is 96. So the mathematician asked ChatGPT explain, how did you come with this answer? All right, ChatGPT explains, and as it explains, it sees its own mistakes, and it says, oh no, it is 95. Then the mathematician asks him, well, but it was 120, and ChatGPT answers, oh, that was a typo. Now, I think that's a very human response. But in any case, that shows you that you can use ChatGPT for lots of purposes. You can also take it realistically and don't expect miracles. Most reporters talk to it in the morning and laugh at wrong answers. We know better. We will use additional technology and we will adjust. And here's the way to adjust. Now, that really is a repository. I'll show you that that looks very like for programmers. And that's what I wanted to show you. Is it? No, that's a different repository. So let's go back here. Yeah. And it's their repository that I wanted to show you. Their repository, I'll put that also. It's mentioned in the talk, and later on I'll give you another link so that you will be ready to go. So I have only two items to share today. Another item is that one, which I just clicked. It's when people ask for prompt engineering, or when they ask for ChatGPT, or when they ask for generative models, very often today, practically, they don't know what to ask or how to ask. So I came up with an outline that makes sense to me. And we start with prompt engineering that is the right thing to do. You get familiar with this ChatGPT and with its limitations. They might stay or they might go, these limitations, but at least today you need to know how to control this beast. The next step is, well, let's look at how did Microsoft integrate it by giving it private documentation and in fact improving that. And finally, we can talk about how you really work with real models. You see, even though ChatGPT advertises itself as fine-tuning, but as we saw, fine-tuning is not that. What is fine-tuning? Fine-tuning means that I get the model from somewhere, and for that it should be open. And OpenAI is closed. It's a paradox, but they're essentially a research lab for Microsoft. So you either go with Microsoft and add additional information, or you find another model, which is not ChatGPT. And today, I think ChatGPT beats everybody completely. But of course, there may appear at least worthy contenders, and that you will need to use Hugging Face to work with it. And that would be real fine-tuning, except that you're starting with an inferior model to tune. But if they give that to you, you stick it into Hugging Face, and there you get a better model. That's what I wanted to show now. That is what I prepared for some of my channels. Again, corporate training is this one. And the last thing that I wanted to show is that there is a course that we will take as a group, even though, yes, we're trainers, but we also train. So it's interesting how I saw a certain course, as you can see, building generative AI applications. So I signed up as a group. We will be training, I'll be training a few of my people there, and it's probably already full. Again, I don't want to be an advertisement for them, but I am. So with all these advertisements and with all that I wanted to show you, to summarize, yes, you can start from proper way of talking to ChatGPT. But then, no, it's not perfect. You can improve it, and here are the links. And then you will eventually come to other models and alternatives, and that's how you will do it. All right, so now, as I promised, let's look at chat. There were very many examples and questions. So let's go through that, and also questions and answers. Some people were asking there. Now, I see it is the same people, so I will say that it's on chat. I'm not sure how do I answer, but it claims that I'm done. Instead, I'm really going to chat. Here's our chat. Okay, let's start our conversation. First, I gave you the link, and I think everybody has the link. The other links will show up in the first link. So the only link that you need is this. Then, whenever possible, can you please share the docs link? Yes, that is right here. At the very beginning of that, this is the webinar folder. So if you click there, you will see all of the other files, and it's not much. Sometimes I post the slides, so when that happens, then they are right here as well. But let's go back. That is the only link that you need. At the top, there are basic links and the links to the folder. At the bottom, it is what we do today. Next question. Can you show details where you drill down further in ChatGPT and got the answer you were looking for? So that is a good question. A specific example. I think what Pablo, I think is Castro's name. Pablo shows an example like, what about hearing? That was a good example because ChatGPT remembers what you said, understands what you said. And the last I looked at Bard, that's the Google chat, it did not remember that. That is very strange that Google didn't do this, but I'm sure they will, and maybe have already done it. So that I think is how you dig for specific examples. Now, I'm also working on a project similar to this. And the project is for defenders, for lawyers who think themselves as heroes and do-gooders because they're not regular lawyers, but they are very often state-provided defenders for, let's say, homeless people. So in this application, we also want to implement ChatGPT, and example of what we want to do is this. It knows the law. For example, we work on the question, is the cop allowed to stop a car during daytime when the windows are tinted and you cannot see something inside that the cop wanted to see? And in that particular case, nobody knew the law. Nobody in court knew the law. The judges didn't know. And that's important, right? So what we need to do is, ChatGPT found an answer right away, but the lawyers immediately said, yes, that is a generic answer. First of all, does he know I'm in California? Does it change from county to county? And he's not familiar with the details of my case. So very natural, I need to give him the details of that lawyer case. That's what I'm working on. When we have it, I will demonstrate. That will be a specific example. The next question, point one, well taken. The prompt engineer, it is fair to say, really just a bit of surface level hack to give GPT more clues on user intent and use case content. Yes, and I agree. I think we all agree by now what that is. Regarding making your own specialized repository, like an insurance company, can you elaborate? Well, I think later on I showed what I meant. And from there, you watch the video because it does have important information. This Pablo Castro is a distinguished Microsoft engineer, and he seems to know what he's talking about. But also, they refer to a repository. We are going to read that, we're going to implement it. So if we make progress, then next week, maybe I will be able to show you something. Okay. You have to drop to take a call, John. No problem, because we record and everybody will get a recording. Now, another question, this is a great segue into price adoption. The security need to be provided in detail to regulate industries. That I agree with. And at least now it doesn't, as they say, steal your documents. Now, that documentation that it doesn't steal your documents, it came to me from talks to friends and colleagues. It's somehow is not even in the open. And where do you find how they subscribe to ChatGPT? And then where does it advertise that it doesn't steal your documents? So all of that is coming from different advertising sources. Even my source wasn't official Microsoft documentation, but it was a podcast. So it is doable, and soon you will be able to ask ChatGPT about exactly that. Is it fair to say that fine-tuning is a misnomer? That's beautiful. And that misnomer, it really misleads people, because some of my channel, who naturally they know about other things, but not that. When you talk about fine-tuning ChatGPT, they say, well, that's probably something unimportant. Well, it's fine-tuning, like sharpening the knife. It's like polishing your boot. They are good enough without the polish as well. No, fine-tuning is just a technical name that attached itself to this. But what it really means is giving the model more information. That would be a better term, but fine-tuning stay. It's everywhere. So we'll have to be used to that and educate people what it needs. So the real algorithm tuning is maybe hyperparameter tuning that is not accessible outside of Microsoft. Yes, correct. However we formulate it, but you take the model, you read it inside of your computer or maybe a cluster. Then you give it additional data and train that. That is not part of what Microsoft suggests. So here we understand more and more about what different people call fine-tuning, and ChatGPT calls something fine-tuning, which is not really fine-tuning in the sense of other people, but it does prompt engineering, smart prompt engineering, and so on. The next question is private knowledge retrieval engineering. Microsoft talks about affect the algorithm or only condition. So it doesn't change the algorithm. The algorithm is, I know English or any other language. It needs more information, which it does with the same model. So the model stays, but it gets more information. And then we have another question. show examples, we have edit prompts, and get better examples. So that is what the video showed. And from then on, you will have to dig a little bit more. That is digging for gold, because the whole world now is interested in how do I take that model and adapt it to my environment. That is the whole world. I'm surprised it's not even more hype than it is right now. So you will have to dig a little bit yourself. Can you elaborate what is true tuning with Hugging Face? So let's repeat that. In Hugging Face and using their library, you are able to get the real model, that hidden model which ChatGPT doesn't give you. And then you're able to add more data, and now it becomes smarter. What is Microsoft suggesting? It is not making it smarter, but giving it more data. So in case of Hugging Face, you really get a big model. It may be a few gigabytes in size, and these are all numbers. Then you train it some more. Microsoft doesn't offer you to train the model some more, but adds references. Now, honestly, I'm a little bit unclear on something else, and that is when Microsoft gives additional information, how does it give all that information to the model? Is that not training? Then what is it? But it works. It seems to work, so probably that is good enough. Now, an example of ChatGPT writing code that you honestly can try for yourself. There are many videos, and I have reports. First of all, the numbers. It used to be that 30% of the code of the people who were working with Code Assistant was written by ChatGPT. Now it is 60. So it is improving. I have some friends who wrote complete application, not one line of code, but just talking to ChatGPT. But if you're not a programmer, I still think it doesn't work. Which leads us to a little bit of a philosophical question. It seems that ChatGPT takes out those people who are just copy pasters, or those who are well, average coders. Okay, so maybe we'll find another job for them. But the assumption is that you need average coders to grow excellent coders. And excellent coders are those that will be using ChatGPT. So in the assumption, in the argument that I saw, the assumption is you have an average coder that goes and grows into great coder. Now, I personally don't agree with this at all. I think a child can be a good coder. And if you have an average coder, then however you trained him, that doesn't help. So according to me, that's not a question, but at least I heard some people asking this question, how ChatGPT is killing many things. Well, that's a bigger question than I can answer. We'll leave it for later. Philosophy. And by the way, today I'm doing also the quantum computing webinar just right after this. And there you do ask philosophical questions. So leave philosophy for later. Now, one more question here. Can you explain the relation between Hugging Face versus ChatGPT and OpenAI? I'm glad I can do it because it took me lots of grinds in my brain. Okay, ChatGPT is a product. Number one, ChatGPT is a product. It is made by the company called OpenAI. Even though it's called OpenAI, but it's closed. So ChatGPT is a specific product, the best, definitely the best product out there. Does ChatGPT compete against OpenAI? No, because that is a product of that company. What is the comparison between Hugging Face and OpenAI? Well, Hugging Face is a producer of tools for AI. And ChatGPT is producer of a specific model. That's very smart. So they're not directly competing. Hugging Face is all into open source. Nothing is closed. And if you go into Hugging Face here, then you will see that they offer other people to host their models. And how many? Well, 177,000. Now you need to go into the sea of models and find which is the best. And here, which task do you have to do? Let's say task classification or table questions answering. So all that ChatGPT does, these models do also, except that ChatGPT does it better. So that's a good training ground when there are models that can really compete against ChatGPT. And you hear about models all the time, new models, new open source models, not yet. So when there are models, you can come to Hugging Face and they offer you wonderful things. They will have a compute section where you can get the computer to train your model further. So if you start with a very good model, now that will make sense. So right now, every model will claim that it is good, but it won't be so. So that is the landscape. Now, keep reading about how users should not submit private data because it becomes property of Microsoft. That is a good question. That is how much you believe a cloud provider. Any provider. So what they promise is, no, we don't do it. Amazon is promising the same thing. We don't do it. And everybody promises the same thing. But that's a question of how much you trust promises in general. Good. I think we touched on every question. I welcome you to email and we'll continue discussing. So let's look at what we covered today. Here is our webinar. And at the very top, that is where you have additional links, like the link to all the materials. This tells you about all that we talked and covered more or less during all this time. That's been half a year by now, I think, or close to that. And this is today. So today we talked about prompt engineering, how much of a profession it is. And I think that is all you need to know about prompt engineering. We covered how Microsoft suggests that you integrate ChatGPT and let it work with your private repositories. And I showed you an outline that is closed. That link will not open because it's a link to my private repository. And that is where I work on courses for people who ask for these courses. Okay, now you can ask the question, you can shout the question, you can chat some more here. Let's see if there are any more questions. Lunch is over, but thank you. Correct. Quantum computing. Let me give a link to this quantum computing. Because we shifted that, we may have messed it up. I hope we didn't. Now, let me show you where that is. That is the quantum computing link. Now, that starts at, it says 1:12 to 1, but that is on Pacific time. You see, it should be AI first, but also you see that it is very strange time. Oh, that's Eastern, okay. So that started at 12 and went until 1 Central, or it started at 1 and went up until 2 Eastern. So we are on target here. This one says 12, but it should be after, not before. And let's see, it says 9 a.m. Pacific time. Well, it looks like that is a mistake, right? If we're talking 9 a.m. Pacific time, that means 11 Central time, and it already passed. So I'm not sure if anybody will come. No, we need to go to Gmail and find it on the calendar. But there I cannot do much. I'll just go to the meeting and see what happens. You see on the calendar. Is that the right calendar? So don't worry. I will appear on the next meeting, and if we're here, then we'll be talking. And if not, well, we'll talk next week. But as a preview, quantum computing was a lot of fun, and the first class went well. Okay. So no, I haven't heard about QuarterPo, and as I go, as I prepare for more classes, I will learn more about what other models are able to do. Because if you remember, where was I showing you? I think we were right here, and we said that is the next course. And at the very end, it includes all the other competitors. So they will be there, plus all the reference, which I don't send, but they talk about all other models. Where can you find this chatbot cheat sheet? It is right inside, right? So you need to somehow grab it out of there, snap, screenshot, something like that. But it is inside of this run file. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're done, and we can continue in the email or some other communications. So thank you very much for coming. I really enjoyed it. I see you next week, and there is always something new. It's amazing how fast it's moving. That's why we have enough to talk every week. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your questions, and see you next week.